Venezuelan delegation at that time, when they walked in, they all came in with snakeskin briefcases and all suited up and what have you, and they didn't receive that kind of respect. Today, any place in the world, somebody from Venezuela has that respect. At one time in history, Africa was emulated by everybody on earth. Everybody who wanted freedom saw Africa. They saw the struggles of African people happening, and that seemed to have been on the cutting edge. But a problem that we have in Africa is that what we have in Africa, and I can't go to all the contradictions in South America because there are many more that I didn't get to. There are black people in South America. There are indigenous, direct indigenous people. There are what people refer to as Ladinos, mestizo, and what have you. And there are other kinds of issues all mixed up in that question about who has even at different times come to power in South America that sometimes has been recognized as revolutionary and independence, etc. in those places. And so there's a lot of stuff at work. When you see Hugo Chavez, you see something different. You see in Evo Morales, you see something different. You see another kind of phenomenon happening, like in those places. But but in the African world, where you've had the carving up of Africa, where you've had African people who live outside of Africa who have been de-Africanized in a certain way in terms of our consciousness, and they work hard at that. It wasn't something like automatically because we were over here for so long and had certain experiences. White people worked their asses off to make us, hate and despise Africa. From Tarzan movies to every other kind of thing that you would ever want to see. I remember in the 1960s, I'm speaking too long, I'm sorry. Sister said yes. In the 1960s, I knew an African who was a member, I think, of the Black Panther Party, and his name was Lumumba. And the Black Revolution was defeated. Next time I saw him, he was a member of the Young Lords Party, which was a Puerto Rican organization, and his name was Che, right? So the point I'm making is that you will see with the strength of the revolutionary process that it will inspire other peoples who are oppressed, and people will want to identify with that. And people in Egypt used to identify with Africa when Nkrumah was alive, and people like Ben Bella out of Algeria when Nkrumah was alive, and when that struggle was strong about Africa, they were more Africans than so-called other Africans, right? So Africa can do it and will do it, and we have a responsibility to make that happen on every front of the African Revolution, including right here in this country. I'm self-critical. I really am in this instance. I've talked too long, and I have a tendency to do that, and you have to discipline me, whoever has that responsibility. Uhuru. And I will struggle for self-discipline. I will really struggle for self-discipline too.
Yeah, I just wanted to add 2 points on Latin America and why it seems to be different. One, and Brother Yusha Taylor talked about it a little bit, is race. There seems to be no question, there's no question in my mind that in the last 20 years or so, and very intensively in the last 10 or so, there's been an awakening of those folk in Latin America who know they ain't white. I mean, they might belong to one of the 57 flavors like they got in Brazil, but they know they're not white. And so there is a consciousness among people of color down there. You can see it very dramatically in Venezuela. The anti-Chavez demonstrations are lily white, just about, you see. The Chavez demonstrations are black and brown and all kinds of shades. And it is clearly, there is clearly, especially in Venezuela, a racial aspect to this. In Bolivia, certainly, those are the indigenous people who are the majority of Bolivia, who are saying to hell with the conquistador and his son. So that is a racial awareness. And in fact, in Venezuela, race is right. It's not a subtext. The bourgeois press, and almost all the press, is still owned by these capitalists who hate Chavez. They still print cartoons of him looking like a monkey. They call him all kinds of equivalents of nigger in Venezuelan colloquial terms. So it's not hidden that the rich who used to run Venezuela feel that the country is demeaned by a person looking like him. running the place. I think another unique part of Latin America is that in the South American part, not the Caribbean basin, where the United States has been messing around for, since the early 1800s, but in South America proper, the United States plunged almost all of those countries almost simultaneously into hell, beginning in 1964 when they forced the coup in Brazil, and then one after another, virtually all of the Latin American democracies or semi-democracies or whatever fell to military dictatorships at the command of the United States, and everybody in Latin America knew it. It was not rumored. Everybody knew the United States did this to us. And the U.S. did that all in that same rather brief period of time, between 64 with Brazil and 73 with Chile. And so that is a shared experience for the whole continent, and not that old an experience. So there are people who are me and Brother Yeshitela's age who were who were still in their formative years when those things were happening. So they're recent memories, and they're common memories, and they are having their racial consciousness moment, like one we had a long time before that, and that combines to make it a very unique place.
I know, Comrade, but Glenn opened it up, and it has to be gone because he raised the racial question, and that was the critical thing. Because the world is accustomed, the whole world is accustomed to brutal treatment of black people, because it's accepted. It is the norm. Because 900 people can die in Jonestown, Guyana, and it doesn't cost a blink. Because how many thousand, 100, 200,000 people can die in Haiti? The world is accustomed to Africans living in the worst kind of misery. It does not even, and Africans of other places, misunderstand that reality and are not connected well enough with it as well. And I think that's a factor, because you can do anything in Africa. Because over the last 50 years, in the Niger Delta in Nigeria, there have been oil gushes that's worse, many times worse than this thing that's happening here in the Gulf of Mexico. That's the way it is in Africa. That's the way it's expected to be. The African is still in the brains of many people the slave against whom you can do anything. And so I think that's a fundamental difference as well. That's why it's our responsibility as African people to identify with the African question as Africans and to fight like hell to redeem our Africa, as Marcus Garvey tried to do so many years ago.
This will be our final question before we end this panel. You want to give your name, sister?
Yeah. Sorry to get the last question, everyone. My name is Donna. Just moved to D.C., and I want to thank you guys for your presentation. It was really enlightening. And I guess my question is just about, the crisis of U.S. imperialism, and how I hear your point. I hear your point, Chairman, about how we have to. Of course, it's always been accepted that African peoples should suffer more than everyone else, and it's just part of the status quo of capitalism. But my question is more about on the broader scale of the crisis of U.S. imperialism. There are these European nations that are called pigs. Portugal, what's the I? I think Ireland, Greece, and Spain. And in Greece especially right now, the austerity measures that have been put forward by capital to save the banks and to put working people on the back burner and to save the banks, it's gonna go around all the world. I think they're trying in Greece first, and they're gonna go to the U.S., and then they're gonna definitely try that all over the world. And the Greek working class is really fighting back against that. And so I just want to know what you guys thought about that as an example, or what it means for us, because I think what's going on in Greece right now, they've had 5 general strikes so far. Last I heard, maybe it's been 6. Their labor movement is really strong, and I'm just wondering what people think about the idea that even within Europe, it's not this big, homogeneous mixture. There are these countries that are supposed to be poorer, and they're not as good as the rest of us, and then those people are fighting back, saying, we don't want this, we're going to fight back. And I'm just wondering what people think about that, and how that can be a way for us to move forward, especially living at the belly of the beast in the U.S. Thank you.
I have to get back to those rates of return. What we are seeing here is finance capital making a concerted attempt to destroy what some people call social democracy, the welfare system, the welfare state in Europe. Why does it do that? Why are they calling for austerity as a way to prosperity instead of doing a Keynesian kind of stimulus? It's because finance capital doesn't really care about stimulating the real economy. They don't live in that real world anymore. They live in derivative land, where there are $500 trillion of monopoly money floating around. They don't have an interest in the real economy being healthy. They are really pure predators. You know, many of us use that word parasites and predators all the time, and it seems like it's just rhetoric. We just say these things because we like to say bad things about capitalists. But they really are, at this stage, parasitical. That is why we know it's in its death throes, because they are incapable now of not only creating productive enterprises that create real prosperity for people and jobs and infrastructure and all those good things, but they are the enemy of it. They see the state, which is that is a government that can use its power to marshal resources, to pull things into its orbit. They see the state as their target, and they're going to consume the state. And consuming the state means consuming all these subsidies and benefits that Europeans get that most Americans would just be. When you find out how they living in Europe, you say, "Damn!" You know, I mean, you can't believe that people get rent subsidies and they're paying $300 a month rent because it's all subsidized, and the kind of spending spendable money they have that's in excess of ours, even when they make lower salaries, because the state is paying for every damn thing that you pay out of your pocket for. You see, so this is an ocean of money that the finance capitalists want to tap into. Rather than stimulate and get the real economies there growing, they want to parasite and vamp on it. And that's what's going down now. And they are doing that in a very concerted way, and it looks more dramatic when they're attacking Europe, because they already have the United States, you see, and there's no fight here. Whereas, as the young lady said, people are fighting back in Europe because they have something to defend. We actually don't have much to defend.
But I want to just speak to that as well. I thought it was a really important issue that you raised, because another aspect of that is that how does capital, when it does respond, and when it attempts to respond to quell the contradictions in Europe or in the white world or in the white community at large, how does it do that? It does what Glenn Ford talked about. It tries to export the contradiction to the colonies. So if, in fact, the problem that we have is that the Greeks, Spain is going to run into the same problem shortly, you know, if it hasn't already happened. The problem that we have, is that the imperialists, when push comes to shove, will attempt to solve that contradiction by extorting more resources from Africa, more resources from all these other places, you understand, where people are living under abject colonial or neo-colonial conditions. And the racialized state is one of the problems that we have as well. The racialized state that has succeeded in winning solidarity from the populations in Europe that would allow them to protect their own interests at the expense of everybody else. That's why, you know, that the Arab is a dirty Arab in America, because when the Arab is successful in taking back some of the resources from oil, etc., the price of gasoline goes up in Washington, D.C. I've never known an Arab before, etc., but it's easier to hate this guy because it impacts on